Welcome to an audio experience that will pique your curiosity and soothe your soul. Join Dr. Dee Evans, your host, as she creates a space for women from all walks of life to reflect upon their life experiences with topics that range from love, spirituality, and pop culture. These discussions will engage and support you on your journey of wholeness and freedom. Welcome to the Hey Sis podcast.
Hey, everybody, and thank you for listening to the Hey Sis podcast. I am your host, Dr. Dee, and today's topic is grief that accompanies God-ordained transitions. Anytime that you are being transitioned by the Lord, I believe that grief accompanies that. Not just joy for the transition to the new thing, but I think that grief is something that is a tag along. Anytime I hear in church, this is your new season, God is about, well, my church don't do that. My church is multicultural, so my pastor don't sound like that. But in my head, that's what happens. Anyway, so this is your new season. Hallelujah. God's going to take you higher. And you get all excited because the music is loud and you want to go higher. Can you take me high? What song is that? That's Creed. Oh, Lord help. I ain't heard of Creed in years. Where did I pull that from? Anyway, I want to go higher, right? But you realize that the acceptance of the fact that you are transitioning to a higher place means that you have to accept that the plans that you made for the space that you're in might not come to fruition the way that you wanted. There's a grief that accompanies transition that has to be acknowledged, and there's some things you have to perform a eulogy over. Prophetically speaking, we are in a crucial time in 2024, not just because of elections, but there is a transition that is being forced upon us by the Lord. Whether you're ready or not, things are transitioning. And because he's sovereign, I know that he knows what's happening. But the Lord is literally removing things and people that would prohibit your long-term acceleration and happiness. And because we are human and we think we know best, we want to try to compromise with the Lord. But ultimately, he knows what's best for us. And in those spaces where we are happy that maybe what we've seen in our dreams and what we've seen in the spirit is coming to fruition. This is the thing. This is the manifestation I've been waiting on. We're excited. It also can bring us to a space where we are sad that maybe the last transition didn't yield to be everything that we wanted or that we envisioned. As Christians and as Christian millennial women, we have a habit of creating things out of what God said. If he said, I'm going to do a new thing, we can decide that new thing is a new job. That's not what God said. He said he's doing a new thing. But we love to draw conclusions. Well, maybe he could mean this, or maybe he could mean that. And I want to encourage you as we discuss this topic is to learn to let things unfold without defining it. When you rush to try to put a definition on what God is doing, it can leave you in unnecessary spaces of grief because you have your soul worked up to see God manifest in this new position that you really, really want because you feel like you deserve it. And then someone else gets it, and then you're going through all these emotions. Oh, God has abandoned you. And it's not that he's abandoned you. He never told you was getting that position. He just said he's doing a new thing. So it's making sure that when we hear from God, that we are sitting with it that we're not adding to what he's saying, that we're allowing what the Lord has spoken over us and revealed to us to be made manifest in the earth realm. And that does take maturity, but it is necessary. Make it a declaration of yours this year that you're not going to put yourself in a space where you are grieving over something that God did not say, where you are grieving over something that you misunderstood from God because you were advantageous. That's borderline what false prophets do, which is why anytime I prophesy, I try to give as much detail as possible without drawing conclusions, because his word is sometimes all we have to hold on to, especially for the immature. So as it relates to our topic, grief that accompanies God-ordained transitions, I do want to announce to you that we are ascending higher. We're moving into a space of new assignments, new alignments. Many of you are going to find yourselves not just in new positions, but new locations physically, new spaces in people's lives. You're going from being an outsider to being an inner circle. Some people in your inner circle are becoming outsiders. You're going from being a worship leader to a pastor. Some of you are going from being the pastor to simply being a father. There are a lot of transitions that God is doing, and they're not lateral movements. These transitions are acceleration. And some of them, I feel led to say this, by man's standards, they can be perceived as demotion. But don't let these snarls of the enemy make you feel like God is pulling the plug on what he said concerning you. When God speaks a thing over you, it cannot be reversed. It still stands. So it is a time to move into these new assignments and into these new alignments, into these new spaces. I have another podcast, I don't know if I mentioned this before, on this platform called Awe and Wonder. And it is teaching me how to sit with God differently. It's teaching me how to worship him differently, not from a space where I want something from him, but from a space where I'm sitting in a worship, where I am revelating on him, where I am reflecting on his majesty, how he's clothed in splendor, and sitting and gazing upon him. And as I gaze, all of my problems, y'all, just fade away. As I gaze upon him, it feels like I have a new revelation on who he is as the consummation of all perfection. I have a better understanding as to why Jesus proclaimed that he is the way, the truth, the life. In him, all things consist. And out of these spaces where many of you all are being poured into, deep levels of wonder and revelation with God and assignment. Many of you are being launched fully into your offices. Some of them are fivefold. Some of these spaces you're in are uncreated. God is really creating space for us to bring in the things that have not been created, not innovation, but the uncreated thing that's on the heart and the mind of God. Beyond the 7 mountains of influence, there's more, right? The uncreated thing, bringing that into the earth realm. As we emerge into this space, as we are catapulted into this place, grief does tag along, because as you get excited about how God is going to manifest, oftentimes you start reflecting upon who you had to leave and who you have to leave. And people can be our biggest supporters, but people and friends can also be our biggest hindrances. And if the enemy cannot affect you with your health or with your self-esteem or with your finances or with your marriage or with your children, the enemy will use your friends. He will use disagreements. He will use strife. He will use contention among your friend groups to make you question whether you belong in this space. And because you love God, you're going to choose him. And sometimes choosing him means you have to disassociate and disconnect from other individuals who did not see God the same way that you saw them. There are people that cannot behold the glory that is being placed on your life because they only see you as Jenny from the block. They only see you as the girl that had the 3 babies at a wedlock. They can't handle you being a wife and being successful and being seen differently. They can't handle you going from being being Robin, and then shifting into being Batman. They want you to be the supporting actor, not the lead character, right? And instead, God's so gracious, instead of forcing you into this space prematurely when you're not ready, when your heart isn't ready, he's creating space in this moment through this podcast. It's an open space now for you to be able to process the grief, to be able to process, wow, Lord, I really would have loved to have Jamie come with me in this season. I miss going to her house. I miss going to the movies with her on Tuesday nights. Lord, I miss my old church. Lord, I miss, can I say this on the same subject? I miss shouting for real. Like, I go to a multi-ethnic church and I can't see myself joining another like all Black church. I can't join anything that's just all one race anymore. I'm not in that space. But there are moments where I grieve not being in a space where I can just buck and nobody looks at me funny. Like, and everybody do it on beat. Hear me, okay? I'm talking about, I miss having one of them shouts where my lashes is across the pew and I can take my shoes off and just dance my little problems away as a sacrifice of praise, right? And of course, I can go to a church and do that. I have a choice. I can do that. I can leave my church and go to one of those Pentecostal, let's run around the church all the time places. But I understand my assignment and I understand the place I'm supposed to be in. And even though I am sure about where I am, I'm sure about the caliber of my ministry, and I'm sure about who I'm called to, it doesn't change my grief of what was. I wish I could marry the two. I want to shout and be in a Heidi Baker trance at the same time. Like, I want to shout and get through dry heaving, and then I want somebody to go get Stephanie Gretzinger and have her sing Yeshua over me so I can just fall out. I want both. But I know that's really not possible to the extent that I would like. I don't want no honky-tonk praise break music, okay? Don't do that. Go get Jabari, okay? So I'm making the example that it's possible that you can be in anticipation of what God is doing, and you can still be grieving what was, what could have happened, and what did not happen, all at the same time. The Lord is ushering all of us into a different era. I have a blog post you can check out at thedevans.com. I titled it, Things Will Happen So Fast Your Head Will Spin. That comes from the Message version of Amos 9:13 through 15. And it just speaks of really prophetically, I'm going to take that in a prophetic sense, not like the background of the text, but prophetically it speaks to me in regards to how the Lord is going to undo the pain of the past and soothe us in a way that when we look back on what happened and what didn't happen, we're not angry with God. We can side with David and say, it was good that I was afflicted, that I may learn your statutes. If you reflect about 2 weeks ago, for my premium subscribers, I did a whole podcast on this. And I had this really short version. I had a dream, a spirit manifested. It was manipulation, the embodiment of it. Anyway, this spirit told me to not talk. It wanted me to shut up. And the spirit wanted me to let it into my house, but it was telling me to shut up and stop talking and all these things it was going to do to me. And thank God for revelation and understanding regarding that dream. But also what I have learned from that experience is that the enemy does not want the goodness of God to be explained or to be announced, because the enemy loves grief. Many of you all have been through, chronologically, been through some difficult things in 2024. And the idea of transition can bring irritation because you feel like you're still dealing with what could have and should have happened last year, 3 months ago. But I just want to announce to you that you're no longer being held back by the past or other opinions or other expectations that people have of you. You're moving further in God's alignment and his timing. And just as I was attacked by an entity telling me to be quiet, I take that as a sign that means I need to speak. And I ask God, well, what do I need to say? I feel like I talk enough. And I'm silent when I need to be. Mostly silent, especially in front of certain groups. But it's not because I don't have nothing to say. It's just because I love the Lord. And the Lord responded to me. He responded to me. And he responded through an impression. And it was impressed upon my heart that the Lord wanted me to speak the truth of who he is, the truth of what he's doing. So here's the truth. We are in a defining moment of our lives, and change is going to happen at the drop of a dime. Not that crazy change like a relative is going to die and it's going to change your life. I'm not talking about something that brings a level of sadness. I'm talking about a change that makes sense of the sadness of the last season. It is a great restoration that is coming. And the only person that will be able to get glory from this will be the Lord. And I wanted to announce to you, as we are all anticipating his glory being revealed in us, that we can also begin to process and make peace with the things of the past. Making peace with who we had to release. Making peace with who had to release us. Right? Realizing that we are not always the protagonist in our own story, and we're also not the antagonist in everybody else's. Owning every part of our journey. And that could mean crying. That could mean screaming. That could mean using vulgar language to express the darkness that you may have experienced in a season. The expression. People don't like when I say that, but honey, sometimes the only thing you can use is a cuss word to describe how you feel. Not saying that you're less intelligent. It's a true form of creative expression, okay? Difference between cursing and cussing, but that's neither here nor there. Making peace with all of you, all of what happened around you, and making that a priority in the coming days. Eulogizing the things that had to die. Okay? So I'm going to end this podcast just giving you an example of something that I had to eulogize, and I had to eulogize my idea of what increase looked like. And I had to eulogize my perception of that. I also had to eulogize my disappointment in what has been allowed. Even though I know that God is sovereign, there was a disappointment that I feel was lurking in the far corner of my heart regarding what the Lord allowed. Because I'm a firm believer God can do anything. And I know the devil is just not smart. So I know he don't have that much power. And I'm just making peace with what God decided was okay. Now, my petition is, now I know the Lord loves confirming stuff like, have you considered my servant Job? Don't put my name out for nothing like that. I'm good. You know that song, I Want to Be Tried by Fire? Nah, I'm good on that. I will never sing that song again. Don't play that nowhere near me. I don't want anybody in heaven thinking that I'm okay with that. I'm tried by fire. I'm good. Been through enough fire. Okay. Been through the limit, through the wall. Okay. I'm not doing it. But my petition is, Lord, make my heart receptive. I want to be able to embody that phrase that I spoke, that scripture, when David said it was good that I was afflicted. I want to look back and not be mad about what was allowed. That's what I want. I don't want to be mad about what had to happen. I want to find joy in my journey. I want to find joy in the journey. And I've had some really good days this year. I mean, a lot. God has been good. But I don't want, my prayer is that as we are all corporately launched into this new space, that grief doesn't overwhelm me because of what I lost in the process. And that I find the space to properly cry and grieve the people that I lost along the way and the things I lost along the way without my heart being hardened and without my sight being skewed. That's my prayer. If that's something that you want to echo, you can steal it. I do want to thank you for listening today. Like I said, I do have a podcast up. Oh my gosh, I have a blog up. Things will happen so fast your head will spin. It's at thedeevans.com. Make sure you go there, read it. It will kind of bring more confirmation to what we're talking about today. And I love y'all. Thank you for this space. Thank you for listening. Until next time.
Thank you for listening to the Hey Sis podcast. Continue the conversation by visiting www.thedeevans.com and follow us for more updates.